Good afternoon, everybody. This video is going to be about this Bourgualt CD 872 air seeder behind us. If you've been watching our channel all fall along, this air seeder is no stranger to you. I've covered it in depth with an initial video and then several videos of us using it in the field, planting cover crops and wheat into our conditions. This video is going to be a continuation of the other videos, primarily the very first one I did, where I gave my initial impressions of this air seeder without even having operated it at all in the field. Just my impressions based upon me studying the machine and seeing how I thought it would perform under our conditions. Late this summer, the Bourgualt offered us this air seeder on an extended demo to test it here in West Tennessee under our very different conditions than what it was initially designed for, mainly out west and up in Canada, where you typically have different soil types, a lot drier conditions, and less residue. They're wanting to break out into the southeastern market and wanted to see how their air seeder design would perform, especially under some high residue conditions, which we had this year, and also different soil types with typically more moisture concentrations. Now, we really couldn't help them out that much with the moisture concentrations in the soil this year, as this fall was one of the driest we've ever experienced. However, we did see some things that I will cover a little bit later on in this video that they need to address, either due to our soil types or the fact that even though it was dry for us, it wasn't necessarily as dry as what they would consider dry. So anyway, I kind of want to break this video down into three different parts as far as my issues with this air seeder. And first of all, I want to be completely transparent and completely fair. I didn't have the proper equipment to run this air seeder behind us. Our New Holland T7.270 tractor, while it's a fantastic tractor and done us a great job on all of our implements, it's just not quite big enough to pull this air seeder effectively. We were able to pull it, we were able to drill with it, and we were able to do a good job, but it was definitely more of a chore with our smaller tractor than what it would be with a bigger tractor. Our tractor is rated for up to 270 horsepower, normal field conditions 235 horsepower, and while it generally had enough horsepower to pull the air seeder at around, between 5 and 6 miles an hour, more horsepower definitely would have been an advantage. More weight on the tractor would have been an advantage, not necessarily in the field, but on the road. But one thing that it was severely lacking on was hydraulic capacity, which I will address a little bit later on in this video. The second category I want to address is not necessarily issues with design flaws, but issues that we had with this thing being brand new from the factory. When we were planting cover crops, we ran into several things that we had problems with on this air seeder. Wasn't because of the design, but just because things weren't torqued right at the factory, or maybe quality control missed a few things. We had issues with dust caps coming off the wheels. As you can see, this one right here is missing a dust cap that we've already replaced once. We had issues with several different hydraulic lines were not tightened, and we lost quite a bit of hydraulic fluid in the process before we caught it. We also had issues with this wheel behind us. The lug nuts on the tire was not torqued right, and the tire came off in the field. So those were definitely aggravations that we had to go through, but it's not a problem with the design. It's a problem with the quality control at the factory. However, we've had new equipment in the past before. Just because it's new does not mean it's going to be 100% perfect. There's a lot of pieces on this machine, and it's very easy to miss a fitting here or a bolt there on getting things tight. And that's the kind of things, even though you're paying an insane amount of money for a new piece of equipment, that you're just going to have to deal with when it comes from the factory. You're going to have some growing pains with it. There's going to be a few odds and issues that first year that you're using it. And then the third category I want to get into is kind of the inherent design flaws that this machine has. And if you're interested in a piece of machine, I know when I'm looking at a piece of machine, I'm more interested in what the problems are with it rather than the features that I like about it, because, if it's got a bad design flaw that I just really can't deal with, I don't care how many nice features it's got on it, I don't want that piece of equipment. So we'll focus on what I think needs to be changed and the problems that it has for our for our region down here. The first issue is the weight of this machine. This air seeder, the way it's configured right now, mid-row banders, the air planter part of it on 7.5-inch spacing, I think weighs somewhere around 35,500 pounds empty. It can hold an additional 8,000 pounds of seed if you combine tank 1 and tank 2 together. We never put anything in the fertilizer tank because we didn't do any fertilizing with it. So, just with it empty, lugging it through the field, you're looking at the equivalent of over a half-loaded grain cart. That's a lot of weight in steel that you're towing around the field before you put any seed in it, or you even put your units in the ground. So you're going to need horsepower to run it. Again, this tractor is a 235 horsepower tractor. It was able to do it, but it was all that it wanted. Now the design flaw comes in is when this thing is folded up into transport position. While it's got a very narrow transport width, which is absolutely fantastic going down the road, the way that it's designed with your main transport wheels back here, and then you got your rear tires on the tractor, you got a lot of weight hanging off in between these tires and your tractor tires. So that equates to about 13,500 pounds of tongue weight when the thing is in the transport position. Now, when it's in the field position like it is now, we've got extra gauge wheels on the front and back supporting a lot of that weight, so you don't have very much tongue weight in the field. But on the road is a different story. So 13,500 pounds of tongue weight. We've got a full rack of weights on the tractor there, but the front end is definitely light with it in transport position. Now, going down the road with it was not as bad as what I initially feared. Yes, our front end is light, and yes, it is very tall, it is very narrow, which you would think would not be very stable, but so it is surprisingly stable going down the road. Once I got used to pulling it down the road, going down the road was not an issue. And the narrow transport width, we didn't have to worry about pulling onto the shoulder when we met traffic or let traffic pass. We could stay within our lane and not cross the yellow line, and we're able to get down the road relatively easy with it. But the weight is an issue, especially considering it's only a 30-foot air seeder. Our 20-foot John Deere 1560 drill, I don't know what it weighs, but it's not anywhere close to what this thing is, and it's 20-foot wide. This one is massive as far as weight and especially tongue weight, but I'm only gaining an additional 10 feet going through the field. So I do like how well it is built, but in my opinion, maybe it's just a little bit overbuilt, and they need to kind of find a way to shave some weight off of it. Now, that massive tongue weight also comes into play into another area. When you take the weight off these gauge wheels that it's supporting and put it that 13,500 pounds on the tongue of the tractor, it's going to squat the rear end of the tractor quite a bit, which leads to another issue in ground clearance, especially of the center section. This thing in the field operating as it is has less ground clearance than a typical John Deere drill or air seeder, but when you're getting on the road and your rear end squats down from all of that weight on the rear end, you lose even more ground clearance, especially on the mid-row banders. And we've got scars all up and down our country roads from this thing pulling onto the road and off the road at all of our field entrances just because it was scraping. Now, I think we were running around 25 PSI in the rear tires on our tractor and their radials, but still, you put that amount of weight on there, they're going to squat some. Now, the other issues that we had, one of them, we had a repeated problem with plugging seed tubes or the hoses going from the towers to the seed boots. We had a constant problem with them plugging, and that was due to several different issues we managed to get straightened out. From the factory, some of these hoses right here going from the towers to the units are a little too long, which can cause them to kind of bend down, and then the airflow's got to push the seed back uphill to get into the seed boots. So the proper hose length was not addressed at the factory. Once we cut a few inches off some of the hoses that we were having issues with, that problem cleared up. Something else that caused the seed hoses right here to clog up is this air seeder has this air planter attachment on it too. So if you're wanting to do more precise planting of, say, corn, soybeans, sunflowers, and some other crops they're developing, you can actually use these singulating meters to meter the seed. It's delivered not through your main air seeder tubes, but through these tubes right here that come down to a completely separate seed tube right here that is just behind your main seed boot over here. And in our soil types and conditions, when we got just a little bit of moisture in the soil kind of wanted to catch in between this tube and the seed boot and kind of pack in there and block seed coming from your seed boot. And then when that happened, of course, your seed tube was blocked up and we had to get down there and clear it out. Now, we didn't have problems on all of these front units where the seed tubes are, but there were certain select ones, and when I finally figured out what was causing our seed hoses to block up, every time we had one block up, we would take that singulating seed tube off, just like we have on this one right here, which opened up all this right here. And on those units, we never had a problem again with the seed tubes clogging up on us. So I don't really know exactly what they need to do on that. They do need to make some way to, say, easily remove them or pull them up out of the way, because the way they are now, you know, for one thing, they are in the way. They do catch residue, they do catch soil, and if we were to want to use the singulating seed tubes, we'd have to take them all off right now anyway and clean them up, because soil has gotten into the openings on this seed tube, and you know, it's blocked off anyway. So even if they weren't causing issues with the air seeder seed boot blocking up, they need to be removed anyway, because they're going to have to be taken off and cleaned before they can be used again as it is. And also, those singulating tubes, they're real close to the disc, but there is a little bit of a gap, and in certain crops, soybean residue especially, the disc opener would kind of kick up residue and it would get pinched between the seed tube and the disc opener, and eventually it would build up enough in there that it would actually lock the disc opener up. So they caused multiple issues of planting under our conditions. Now, we didn't see much of an issue from the residue building up between the seed tubes and the disc openers and corn residue as we did soybean residue, and then cotton residue was kind of somewhere in between. They did cause a little bit of an issue, but not near as much of an issue as when we were planting into soybean residue. So the whole air planter system, or at least the seed tube part of the air planter, to work down here, it does need to be modified somehow, either some way to where we can, I don't know, flip a latch and just pull these up out of the way or easily remove them. As it is, it takes me about 10 minutes per seed tube to pull off the way that they're mounted, because you kind of have to snake them out of there. But if one reason that you're considering this CD 872 because you're wanting to use the air planter part, the singulating part, that is something you definitely need to take into consideration when you're using the air seeder part. As the way it's designed now, these seed tubes are going to have to come out, and you're going to have to put them back in whenever you want to use the air planter part. One of the other issues that we had is due to all the blockages on the seed tubes we had. The only way we knew that we had a blockage was we would come back to the seed tower and pop the cap off of it and look in there and see if any of the openings were blocked. The reason we had to do that is because on these 48 units right here, there's only 4 sensors on the seed tubes to let you know if the tower is blocked. Now, in this day and age of electronics and monitoring, that is something that absolutely needs to change. There needs to be a sensor on each single seed tube to let you know if you've got a blockage, because you go across a lot of my fields that I planted before I figured out they had a problem with seed tips being blocked. You know, we've got skips where a row unit was not putting out. Now, I brought this up with Bourgualt, and they told me they are actively working right now on coming up with a system that's able to monitor all the seed tubes on there. So hopefully by next year's production, that will be something that will be fixed. Now, as I mentioned, ground clearance on this thing is less than what John Deere's is, and that did come into play out in the field. So, just like I mentioned, we had problems with the seed tubes clogging up before I figured out the reason why. There were several times we would have to take a seed boot off, and when one of these up in here would clog up, I'd try to squeeze my way up in there to be able to get to it, and then try and maneuver my shoulders where I could get both arms up in there. And the lack of ground clearance was definitely an issue. Now, I'm not a fat person by any stretch of the imagination, but I am a fairly large guy. I'm 6'2", 225 pounds, and with a lack of clearance, getting up in there was a definite ordeal. Now, the seed boots themselves are extremely easy to take off. You take this one bolt out and the seed boot drops out. Now, it's real easy on the outside here, but getting up in there, you need both hands, and then getting maneuvered around can definitely be difficult. And in fact, I found the easiest way to, when I had a problem with the seed boot, especially if it was like here on the wing, was to fold it up in the transport position, climb up the units themselves, and then I could get to it then, if I was dealing with one of the ones over here in the middle. If I was dealing with one of the ones right here close to the outside, I try and squeeze up under there, but actually climbing up the units themselves to get to ones over there in the middle was easier than trying to crawl all the way up under there. Now, continuing to talk about ground clearance, where we had the most problems with ground clearance was with these mid-row banders. What you would use to apply fertilizer beside the row if you wanted to. And it's a different design on these fertilizer openers than what it is the disc openers. And we've got a whole lot of terraces and hard to get places here in West Tennessee. And the pickup mechanism on this, as you can see, we've got about maybe a 12-inch clearance right here. And if you're going over a terrace with this thing, you can imagine this thing's going to be about like a boat anchor. It's going to hit the dirt, and it's going to absolutely dig into the dirt. It's not going to roll over the dirt like an opener would or a gauge wheel would. It's going to get into the dirt, and it's going to act like a shovel right here. And there was actually one field that we've got to cross a terrace to get down into it, and there's only one place we can cross the terrace because it's steep, and I didn't think I was going to get back out of that field. We got over in there, but coming up out of the field, we had to come up the terrace, and those things dug in, and it stopped my tractor dead, and it spun out. And there for a minute, I thought we weren't going to get out. Finally, I had to get a running start, get enough momentum to where those things would just plow through the ground and come out the other side. Those are definitely a concern for me. Now, I really did love the really narrow transport position, but if you're going to go narrow, the only way you're going to do that with this size of equipment is to go taller. And with all of our trees and low-hanging power lines on our roads here in West Tennessee, that did prove to be a little bit of an issue. We'd have to be very careful going down the road watching for overhead obstructions, because I think with this thing folded up, it's about 15.5 feet tall. And even though I was trying to be very careful going down the road, we did encounter some issues. And you see right here, these two air planter parts, they're supposed to be standing straight up and down, but they must have gotten hit by a limb going down the road, and it bent this bracket right here. Even though we got this nice kind of a shield blocking it, with it being out here on the end, they were all the way in the air, and they managed to get hit by a tree limb. And then also talking about these air planter parts, even though we didn't use them, they did suffer some abuse from the corn stalk residue that we were planting into. You can see that this housing got knocked off So we got some wiring harnesses that got pulled apart just from the tough corn stalks we were planting into. So, you know, that's the kind of stuff Bourgualt was wanting to see, you know, issues that we would encounter with the kind of conditions we plant into with their design. So, you know, all of these things that I'm mentioning, Bourgault's been down to visit me, and we walked around and I've pointed out the issues that I've had with this, and they're going to do their best to address some of these concerns before, you know, it's released into this market down here. Now, one of the biggest issues that we had with this air seeder was hydraulic flow. My tractor right there supplies a maximum of 45 gallons per minute of hydraulic flow, and for everything that we run, 23 row planter with vacuum, air compressor, alternator, everything else on it, you know, that hydraulic flow is more than enough. However, that maximum flow was barely enough to run this air seeder the way that we were using it. And what we were using is one fan on here, which this air seeder has a total of 3 fans on there, but for what we were doing with it, we only needed 1 fan. And then all the active leveling of the wings, and then the raising and lowering of the seed units. Now, this 30-foot model on 7.5 inch spacing that has a total of 48 different units on there. And if you look here, each of these units has its own hydraulic cylinder to raise and lower it. And Bourgualt tells me that these cylinders right here require about a half a gallon of hydraulic flow per minute for each cylinder. Well, at 48 units, you're talking about 24 gallons per minute, and that's over half the hydraulic flow that this tractor can supply. However, what we found is actually the fan requires the most hydraulic flow out of all of it, because to get the proper fan RPM, we were having to use over 50% of our hydraulic flow to run the fan, and therefore our openers, you know, we did suffer some lack of performance because we weren't able to supply enough hydraulic flow for all of these units. Now, if we were to use the mid-row banders up here and also apply fertilizer, that's going to be another, I believe, another 24 cylinders we'd have to activate. So there's no way that we could use the mid-row banders to apply fertilizer. I was really wanting to try them out, but, you know, my tractor just didn't supply the hydraulic flow. Now, one modification we did do to try improve hydraulic flow is we were only using 2 circuits on the tractor, one for the fan and then the one for the row units and the row leveling. And what we did to try and get more hydraulic flow, because we thought that there was probably a bottleneck in these tips, which are only rated for like, I think, 13.5 gallons per minute. We were using 2 hydraulic valves to supply 1 circuit. We had these Ys made up, and which definitely helped improve hydraulic flow. However, it didn't cure our problem. We had to be very careful when we were turning around on the field edges to give the drill enough time to raise all the units up and then let the units down and build pressure before we could take off full speed. Now, I really do like the idea of using these cylinders to supply a hydraulic downforce to the row unit. And, you know, it's going to be more adaptable than just, say, having a spring up there to actually supply downforce, but using them to pick up the unit and let the unit down just requires a lot more hydraulic flow than I think is reasonable. What I would really like to see is all of these units mounted on a rotating rock shaft like what John Deere does, and you use, you know, 1 or 2 cylinders per wing to rotate that rock shaft, let the units down, and then just use these cylinders to supply, you know, hydraulic downforce. And that should really lessen the flow requirements needed, because you just need to keep pressure on this cylinder. You don't actually have to extend this cylinder in and out to raise and lower the drill. And then mounting all of these on a rotating rock shaft would also add the ability to easily remove a whole row of row unit gangs, drop them down, pull them out from this air seeder, and then, say, hang them from a front end loader or a forklift to easily work on them when it does come time to overhaul. Because the way it is now, with the low ground clearance overhauling this thing, replacing your disc openers, bearings, you know, all, you know, pins in your parallel linkage, all that kind of stuff, I would imagine it would be an absolute nightmare. It's bad enough on a typical John Deere drill, which we've overhauled several times, but on John Deere it's made a lot easier that we can easily pull, I think, either 4 or 6 bolts out of a rock shaft, drop a whole row unit of gangs off, pull them out, and then hang them all from a front end loader where it's everything's right there at chest level to take on and replace. Just makes it so much easier. The same thing could probably be done with this, the way it's designed, because this bar that all the row units mounts on is held on by U-bolts. It's quite a few U-bolts, but you could always take these U-bolts off, drop this bar down, and pull the whole row units. And dropping it wouldn't be all that bad, but getting it picked up and mounted and then getting those U-bolts lined back up, that would be a little bit of an ordeal, I would imagine. So I would like to see all of this redesigned to a rotating rock shaft. I think it would really offer a better performance with less hydraulic requirements for people that, you know, don't have you know, a bigger Magnum or a John Deere 8R or whatnot. Now, continuing to talk about hydraulic flow, if you're wanting to maximize the potential of this air seeder, you can use it as an air planter attachment, as I mentioned earlier. And I won't dive a lot into it because I haven't actually used it, but the principle behind it is that you blow seed from your tank up here to your meters, and then you've got a singulating meter that uses positive air pressure to then singulate your seed back to your openers. But to do that requires using an additional 2 fans on this, which Bourgualt tells me ups the hydraulic requirements up to around 85 gallons per minute of flow. Now, just for comparison, a brand new Case IH Magnum tractor will supply up to 75 gallons per minute of hydraulic flow when it's got the high flow option. A John Deere 8R series tractor with the high flow hydraulics will supply up to 84 gallons per minute. So I don't know if using the air planter attachment would even be possible on a Magnum tractor, and if you put a John Deere tractor on there, it would absolutely be maxing out the hydraulic flow. Now, your Fendt tractors, if you get the dual pumps, can supply, I think, up to like 115 to 120 gallons per minute of hydraulic flow, but not everybody's got a Fendt. The only other way to get more hydraulic flow is to hook a 4-wheel drive tractor up to this. And, well, I mean, using a 4-wheel drive tractor to pull a 30-foot drill is way overkill. But if that's what you need to do to get the hydraulic flow, that's kind of where I'm getting around saying that the hydraulic flow requirements for this air seeder are insane. There's got to be some way to lower the hydraulic requirements, because I mean, basically you're pulling a 30-foot drill through the field. You're not pulling a 40-foot, a 50-foot, 60-foot. You're pulling a 30-foot drill through the field, and you need up to 85 gallons per minute of hydraulic flow. I mean, the requirements for basically what you're doing is pretty insane. But that's only for the people that are wanting to use the air planter attachment. You don't need near that hydraulic flow if you're just going to use the air seeder part, which is, you know, basically what it's designed to do. Now, a couple other gripes that I got is the absolute mess of hoses. I mean, you're talking about there's hoses going everywhere right here. There's got to be a better way for better hose management than what there is now. You know, we did have issues with hoses getting damaged in folding and unfolding. You can see right here, this one got pinched in the folding and unfolding process. This one got pinched. It's still functioning, but it did get pinched. You know, there's got to be a better way to manage all of these hoses right here. You see, here's another one right there that got damaged. Also, because of all the hoses, when you have to get over here and unplug a hose like I had to do, you know, crawling across all of this when it's absolutely filthy and dusty. I mean, you're going to get plumb nasty. I would love to see some kind of catwalk on each of these wings going across here to be able to easily get over in there and work on stuff. You know, I'm definitely not as young or as flexible as I used to be, and getting over in there, trying not to trip over a hose, fall and injure myself was a definite issue. Now these tanks up here are fantastic. You can configure them several different ways. Got nice big openings to load into, and the way we were using it, we were tying one of the small tanks, tank 2, into tank 3 to give us a total of about 8,000 pounds of seed carrying capacity in the field. However, to really fill these things all the way up, you know, we'd have to get over here and, you know, push seed up into the corners and everything, just trying to get everything packed in here as what we can. And then, you know, this would be covered in dust right here, and we would just get absolutely filthy. What I would love to see is some kind of little ladder or something to climb up here, because again, I'm not near as young and agile as I used to be, and having some type of ladder to help you know, someone like me get up here would be a very nice feature. Now, after all that, you're probably thinking, man, you must have hated this air seeder. I mean, all you've done is gripe and complain about it. You know, I don't want you to get that impression at all. This is a very well-designed air seeder. There's just certain things that I think need to be redesigned to make it a perfect air seeder. Now, let's talk about what I really did like about this thing. For one thing, I've never seen any kind of drill put seed in the ground as well as this one does. We had probably the heaviest residue we've ever had. We had almost a record corn crop this year, and we planted 500 acres of cover crop, and we got, I mean, an absolutely picture perfect stand. I've never had a stand this good of cover crop in the field, except for perhaps last year when we were planting into about 80 bushel corn residue because of the extreme drought. We got about this good of a stand, but in a normal year, we would not even approach having this good of a stand of cover crop. Right here in this one spot, we were averaging about 200 bushels per acre. So other spots of the field were upwards of 250 bushels per acre, and we got an absolutely perfect stand. And this Bourgualt CD 872 has got a different kind of a opener design than what your traditional drills do. You know, you look at the blade here, you know, it's slanted in that way, just like a traditional single disc opener drill is. But instead of this disc opener being vertical, it's also slanted in that way. It opens up a narrower slit than what a traditional drill does. It doesn't move as much dirt, but it kind of creates a little pocket down here at the base for seed to go in, and does an absolutely fantastic job of slicing through residue and placing seed. It places the seed so well. When you're actually digging in the trench, seed can kind of be hard to find because it's not where you would expect it to be. It's kind of tucked up under the sidewall in a little pocket that can be, it can actually be hard to see, but it leads to a phenomenal seed placement and excellent germination. You know, these seed firming wheels here, they do a great job. You know, it's flexible rubber. It can follow the seed trench real good. These packing wheels, I was kind of hesitant about them because I'm used to, you know, cast iron ones that are angled and throw dirt back up over on the seed trench. But because this disc opener design doesn't move much dirt, there's no need to move much dirt back into the seed trench. But this does an absolutely fantastic job of closing any seed trench you got and firming it down. Now, I also absolutely love this seed boot design. It's a little bit narrower design than what John Deere's is, and I mean, it really puts the seed, places the seed exactly where it needs to go into the kind of that offset seed trench. I really do love that. I also love the fact on how easy this row unit is to work on. You know, to pull this seed boot off, all you got to do is pull off one easily accessible bolt, and this whole seed tube comes out. We did have a little bit of an issue with especially corn stalks when we're planting, coming up through our depth, our where we set our depth right here and pushing up on this handle and moving it, adjusting our depth. But we didn't have near as much of a problem as what we do on our John Deere that's got the same type of T-handle, because this one has kind of guards right there to kind of deflect stalk. So we did experience a little bit of a problem, but not what we did like we did on the John Deere. Again, like I said on my initial video, I absolutely love these spoked gauge wheels right here. And after planting 1,200 acres, you know, the rubber's still in very good conditions, no problems whatsoever. The calibration on this thing is so simple and easy. I absolutely love the calibration, which I documented in a previous video. But basically, you take this hose loose, you stick it in the funnel, you run your meters, fill up one of these buckets that they already provide you, hang it from a scale that they provide you, and then record in the monitor how many pounds that bucket weighed. It's actually pretty accurate. It's probably not as accurate as I like to calibrate a drill, but I think part of my problems with not having 100% total accuracy on my pounds per acre was that this thing varies the speed of the auger on your tank based upon your GPS speed. And because I was a little lacking in horsepower, you know, I couldn't maintain just a constant, say, 6 miles an hour, especially when we got to hills and whatever, and my speed was fluctuating back and forth, so the motor itself was constantly trying to fluctuate. So I think that's where I was not getting the very exact accuracy that I shoot for in a grain drill. Now, on the times that we did have a seed hose plug up, you know, it wasn't hard to clear. They're very easy to take off. Just have your flat head screwdriver, loosen the clamp up here and then down there, and then shake the hose out. So it was very easy to clear a blockage in it. Now, my initial review video, I was saying that I really didn't care much for the Topcon monitor. But after using over 1,200 acres, I do like it a lot more than what I initially did. It's not the favorite monitor I've ever run, but once I got used to where everything was and how to navigate the menus and everything, it became a lot better monitor. There's still a few things that I don't like about it, namely that you got icons instead of words. So it does take some learning and getting used to, but overall, I do like it a lot more now than what I did before. It's still not my favorite monitor, but it's a lot better than I thought it'd be. One other thing that I really loved on this thing is the LiftMaster system. Using over here on the keypad, you know, once you get to a field, if you want to, all you got to do is hit this play button. It sets your units down, it starts planting, and then when you get to an area of the field that you've already planted, it automatically cuts your meter off and it raises the row units up for you, and you don't have to touch anything. Now, it does have some quirks that you need to learn and adjust for as you're planting in the field, but overall it works very good. So basically, all you got to do when you're planting is you got to sit up here and steer the tractor, and if you got auto steer, the only thing you got to do in the field is turn the tractor around. Otherwise, you sit, all you're doing is just sitting up here and monitoring everything, which I really like. It's a very well designed system and does a very good job. All right, my battery's running low, so I'll try and wrap up my conclusion pretty quickly here. Would I buy this drill? It's a big question. I would definitely consider it if I had a bigger tractor to pull it with, especially it had more hydraulic capacity, and I had this air seeder configured a little bit differently. I don't need the air planter part. We've got a Kinsey planter outfitted with almost 100% precision planting parts that does an excellent job of planting. I don't need the air planter part. Would somebody else need the air planter part? Definitely, potentially, but for our operation, I don't need the air planter part. So that would right there, that would eliminate about half the hoses. One of the issues I've got with this air seeder. I would not get the mid-row benders on there. I don't need them for fertilizer replacement. The fertility in our farms is real good. Surface applying fertilizer with our variable rate buggy does what I need it to do, so I would not get the mid-row benders, which would take even more hoses away from this thing. It would lighten the weight on this, which would lower the tongue weight, and also my big issue with the ground clearance, it would really help fix that. It would not make this thing as long, make it a little bit more maneuverable around some of our smaller fields, and it would be a better air seeder for us. You know, by configuring it that way, having a bigger tractor, basically my only concern is the low ground clearance and the difficulty of getting up in there to work on it and overhauling it. And I think that that's something that I could manage with, especially as well built the quality of components that this air seeder uses. You know, servicing it and overhauling it would be a less frequent deal than what you would see with other air seeders. I believe the superior seed placement that this thing has, the excellent stand we get, would definitely overweigh the annoyance or the inconvenience of having to get in there and work on this thing whenever the time did come to work on it. Now, that being said, we've only got a 1,600 acre operation. There's no way that I could afford the price tag on this air seeder, which the way it's configured now is going to be somewhere in the ballpark of $350,000. Now, you take the mid-row banders off, the air planter part over, I mean, obviously that's going to lessen the cost of this machine a lot more. But if we were in the market for something like this, most likely it would have to be a used one for our size farm. You know, overall, my opinion of Bourgualt has an extremely well thought out, a well-designed machine that does what an air seeder is supposed to do: put seed in the ground, and it does an absolutely phenomenal job at that. I cannot say enough good things about it. But the machine that they gave me to test, the way it's configured to work in our conditions, our environment, I do think it does need some modifications, which with my conversations with Bourgualt, I think that they are going to make some changes to this machine. I don't know what those changes are going to look like. I don't know how well they're going to work, but I do think that they are definitely taking my concerns into consideration and are going to even further refine and improve this machine. So guys, that's going to wrap up everything about this Bourgualt drill. We might be seeing it back on our farm again next spring. They're working on some cotton plates and maybe doing some redesigning some of my concerns, and we might potentially try it next spring, maybe planting some soybeans, maybe planting some cotton, using the singulating units. There's some hurdles we got to jump through in order that happen, but they have talked with me about the possibility of doing that. I don't know if it'll come to fruition. We're going to have more conversations this winter, but I really appreciate the opportunity from Bourgualt to test this machine out. I learned so much over the last couple of months running this thing about what we need for our farm whenever we do upgrade from the box drill that we have. I really appreciate the opportunity to run this and them entrusting me and giving a fair and impartial review about the good things about this air seeder and also about some of its shortcomings. So a huge thanks to Bourgualt, and if they need to in the future, I look forward to, you know, potentially other opportunities in the future, helping them develop their products into this area down here. Something I forgot to mention while I was out filming this video is that right now we're using the drawbar hitch, and to help with the ground clearance, you can add a hitch on there that hooks to your 3-point arms, which you can raise and lower it, getting in and out of difficult situations, which can really help your ground clearance. However, that connection point, as you can tell, moves all this tongue weight farther back if you use 3-point option, which further exasperates how light the front end is when it's in the transport position as it is now. It's got more leverage on the back of behind your rear axle, and this definitely does not feel securely planted, especially turning in and out of fields when you're using the 3-point hitch option. As it is, it can be a little sketchy on turning, getting in and out of fields with it on the drawbar, because the front end is so light because of the massive tongue weight. But also, one of my major initial concerns was how stable this air seeder would be in the transport position going down the road. Going down the road, it is very stable. The only sketchy part is kind of going in and out of fields where you don't have a perfectly level entrance, and it kind of wants to do that right there. So we just take it real nice and easy, but it is a lot more stable than what it looks and what I initially thought. And also, if you have a long ways you have to transport this thing with these tires on here, with a recommended PSI, you're limited about 18-19 miles per hour with this thing. Of course, remember, you are hauling 35,000 pounds plus seed going down the road, so you know, top speed is probably not going to be concerned, but these tires are only rated for about 18 miles an hour on maximum transport speed too. Well guys, while I was in the process of editing this video, I had one more video that I had promised to you at the beginning of the season with a Bourgualt CD 872 air seeder. I was going to do a side-by-side comparison of the Bourgualt drill right next to our John Deere 1560 drill. We filmed that planting cover crops, but unfortunately when I went to look for the footage, because I was going to edit it right after this video, I must have accidentally deleted it. It was, you know, we generate massive amounts of files during harvest, and it must have been in one of the cover crop planting files or the corn harvest files or whatever. And when I deleted that folder to make room for more harvest files, it must have gotten deleted in the process. I'm really upset, because to me that was going to be the most important video that we did with this Bourgualt air seeder. Just one of those things that happens. But anyway, side-by-side placement, the Bourgualt was definitely far superior with seed placement. It was getting all the seed in the ground, where my John Deere drill, like I expected, was not able to penetrate all the residue and put all the seed in the ground. We definitely got a far superior stand with the Bourgualt drill than we did the John Deere drill side by side. So it just goes along with what I've been saying all year long. Even with the issues we have with this air seeder, the one thing it does fantastic is what a drill is supposed to do. It flat out puts the seed in the ground, and you get a fantastic stand out of it. So guys, I apologize not to be able to have that video. Trust me, nobody's more upset than me. I'm sure Bourgault's going to be upset, because that's one of the videos that I promised them when they said that they would let me demo this air seeder. But when a file's deleted, it's deleted. I tried some recovery software to try and find it on the disk, but it is those files are nowhere to be found. But anyway, guys, sorry about that, but stuff happens. That's all I can say. See you in the next video.